Hi, everybody!
A little while ago, one of my subscribers told me about a game coming to PS5 next year called Dusk Fade. I will admit the title interested me because I enjoy 3D platformers in general. I much prefer them to the style of platformer that is all the rage in the indie scene at the moment, those being Metroidvanias. Don't get me wrong, I do enjoy those too, but I prefer 3D ones generally speaking. Since some of my all-time favorites include Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon, I'm also rather partial to Ratchet & Clank. Also, back in the PS2 days, I enjoyed the likes of Jak and Daxter. You can definitely see Dusk Fade takes inspiration from both the Jak and Ratchet franchises from the trailer which released last month. Normally I'd do a deep dive into the trailer itself, however, I feel like I don't have much in the way to offer in that respect, other than I think the game looks cool as hell, and it's now officially on my radar. But it did spark an idea I've had in the back of my head for a while. I feel it's time we discuss not just the history of 3D platformers, but also discuss if they're effectively dead or not. To really do this video justice, we have to go all the way back to the 1990s. This is when 3D gaming first took hold. It's also when platformers evolved from being just simple 2D affairs. Until the very early 2000s, the Mascot platformer was something gamers couldn't avoid. You had things like Gex, Bubsy, and Mario, all three had their starts with 2D titles. Then you had new kids on the block like Crash and Spyro, among countless others who have faded into gaming obscurity. The vast majority of 3D platformers from the early days faded into obscurity for a reason. A good majority of them were just frankly terrible video games that were bad even for the time they launched when gaming was kind of the Wild West, and design philosophies had yet to be solidified. So couple that with the fact the market was flooded with them, and it was little wonder that by 2004 the market had more or less dried up for these titles, except for a few, which are still going to this day. By the mid-2000s, first-person shooters had effectively replaced them as the go-to gaming genre, with the cinematic experience replacing that in the 2010s through to the mid-part of the 2020s. However, it seems like enough time has finally passed for gamers to actually desire 3D platformers again. While the genre hasn't become oversaturated like it did in the 90s, signs of 3D platformers having a new lease on life started in the mid to late portion of the 2010s. You had games like A Hat in Time, Yooka-Laylee, and the revival of all-time classics like Crash, Spyro, Croc, and many others. What has caused this revitalization, though? The revitalization is mostly thanks to game developers from my generation feeling a sense of nostalgia for their childhoods. After all, 90s kids all grew up with these titles, and many of us dreamed of getting into game development so that we could make something like the games we loved so much. You're seeing this with revivals of older IPs, along with brand new ones like Dusk Fade, which I hope will do well enough to get a sequel, because it shows potential. Just like Astrobot proved, you don't need to have an overly complex platformer to be considered for Game of the Year. You just have to be fun. Which is something platformers just tend to be. For whatever reason, even the grittiest and most grim ones lend themselves to just being fun experiences. I've never been able to put my finger on why though. But we're starting to get these experiences again, and while they may never reach the heights they did 20 to 30 years ago, it's clear they're coming back, even if they are niche experiences. They're ones that people actually value, which is just great to see. So, what do I think the future of this genre is? I think going forward, these types of games are going to mostly be indie passion projects coupled with a few huge releases from the likes of Insomniac Games with Ratchet & Clank, or Nintendo with Mario, and other various IPs that transcend the genre, which I ultimately think is going to prove healthier for this style of game. I also think we'll see an increased number of them announced and released over the coming years, considering this revival really only started in 2017. You have to remember the majority of games take between 3 to 7 years of development time, so when the newest kids on the block, like A Hat in Time and others released, we weren't in the midst of the revival. They were merely the spark to light the fire. Now that devs know there's a market for this kind of game again, we're going to slowly see more and more spring up over the next handful of years. And based off how those perform, we'll determine where the future of 3D platformers go. Generally speaking though, I think this style of game is in good hands, and I really look forward to seeing where it goes. While Dusk Fade may take inspiration from greats like Ratchet & Clank along with Jak and Daxter, we really need to see a company take inspiration from something like Sly Cooper. along with Sly returning as well. But do you think 3D platformers are going to have a resurgence just like Metroidvanias did? Let me know in the comments. Thanks go out to my current channel members whose names are on screen now. Check out one of my videos on screen, and until next time, keep blazing that trail.